Hello guys, welcome to Ask Raghulan. So today we're going to see what is IoT, and if you want to start a career in IoT, what you have to do, or a hobbyist, doesn't matter what you want to do, and what is the future of IoT, and what sort of companies you look for, and what sort of roles that are available, and what sort of technologies, and how to get started. So that is what we're going to see. Field of study and focus. So what is the thing that you want to do, and what is going to be your focus? Now, as I said, there is hardware part of it, there is software part of it, and there is networking, IT security. There is a lot of different fields that you can, even AI and machine learning, and a lot of these things you can work on as well. But you have to decide which is your field of study and which is your focus. That means, your field of study could be pretty broad, but you can actually focus on certain elements of it in such a way that you can create a niche require necessity for your role in any company, in an IoT based company. And as I said, two choices: one is hardware and another one is software. Generally hardware, the pay is much lesser compared to someone who knows hardware and software. So if you're choosing hardware, software, and if you know hardware and software, either you can be bit of hardware and more of software, or bit of software and more of hardware. If you know both of these things, you are actually positioning yourself as in a very, very good spot right out there. So that's getting started. So next one is areas. So there are different areas that IoT industry looking for people, they're looking for. So one is cloud and edge computing. So if you are good at AWS, Azure, IBM, Watson, IBM Cloud, or Google Cloud, Alibaba, and whole bunch of these guys, DigitalOcean, a lot of these cloud-based infrastructure. If you are very good at it, or if you have done some certifications, this is something you can look for. But remember, you can be a pure cloud engineer. You may not have much of an expertise in IoT, but if you're working in industry as a pure cloud engineer, and someone might come and take your job pretty quickly, because people, there are a lot of people who can actually create instances and configure AWS. Let's say there is another guy who can create an instance, but at the same time he can also understand how much of load that comes from this type of sensors and things like that. So then he will quickly make himself more attractive compared to you. So if you are someone like a cloud expert, and if you want to get into IoT space, especially into this area, my suggestion is get your understanding and into Raspberry Pis and a lot of different things as a basic, and then try to understand what your company does, and try to get understanding of what the hardware things does. That means you create a sort of like a domain knowledge that you can apply into your day-to-day stuff. And then networking. So a lot of these things are interconnected. Let's say if you're looking at agriculture or mechanical or civil infrastructure, a lot of these projects where they're going to put a whole bunch of sensors in a large area, and they're going to connect to an internet through a sort of like a network, and then they need to talk to each other and things like that. There could be machine to machine, or there could be machine to a sort of like a directly loading data into a database, or they could send directly to a human in sort of an app or a web interface. So it depends on what these things do, but anyway, these things have to be networked. These things have to be connected to a network. So there is a space for it. And but this space is shrinking. The reason being is these days IoT devices doesn't require extensive configuration. That means you can easily plug into a network, you can easily connect to an internet, you can easily connect to an APIs and stuff. They're making it a lot more easier these days. So this space is sort of getting a lot of things in that one is getting automated from different areas. And so next is IT security. So this space sort of grow a bit bigger. The reason being is, technically, if you see any software engineer or a hardware engineer have a very little understanding of security space. And so my experience working in IT security for a year, so I tend to think things in a bit different way when I started programming, and when I do some sort of a robotics work. And especially if someone is coming from an robotics engineering industry or embedded systems, they have very little knowledge about IT security space, and same with the software development guys as well. So they may not have much of a clue of how generally hackers work, and how SQL injection works. So they don't really have a basic understanding of some of these things. So having a bit of a knowledge, or if you got some let's say CSSP or some of these certifications done, and then if you got a space into IoT, then you put yourself in a very good place. So right now, a lot of the devices that you see out there, they are very unsecured. Most of those things, they don't really have any security protocol or security measures have been people taken by. That means you can pretty much easily hack into some of these sensors and get the data of what they're sending to someone else. So that's why these days people are giving a bit more importance to the data that is the sensor sending through, at the same time making it secured in a secure tunnel as well. And then understanding of sensor and the data that the sensor sends in. So that is one of the crucial things, guys, because if you don't have an understanding of different types of sensors and what sort of data they send through, then it's going to be really, really difficult. So to give you an idea, so now so we have few sensors here. So one is in this one is in ultrasound sensor, and then so this one is basically a light sensor which detects the amount of light in terms of flux, and then it tells you what's the value of intensity of the light. And this one is a piezo crystal which detects the sound and tell you how much is sound in decibels that it hears around. And similarly, there is also other set of things that's out there. So one is let's say a stepper motor, and another one is a servos. So these things are actual motors which moves things on the field. Could be a wheel, or could be a sensor looking at in a particular direction. It changes those directions. So these sort of motors have to send data back into your device to tell you which direction it is actually looking into it. So you can actually show it and send those information to the people. So now the problem with these kind of stuff is if you don't have a background of using these things in a practical scenario, or even making a small project, you have no clue of what this is, and you don't know what this data sends. Even if I give you a raw data of this one and give you a data sheet, you don't know how to read this information. So it's best you understand different types of sensors and different types of devices, and what sort of data they send in, and what sort of data range, and how to interpret this information. So which is really crucial. As I said, understanding basics of everything is important. And so you might be focused on certain area, but understanding the basics about everything is very important. And then analytics. Analytics is basically you look at the data that you get from different sensors, and then showing it on a neat dashboard with more informative and processed data. That's pretty much, you can make the user aware of what is happening with more quick charts and pie charts and bars and stuff like that. So that way people can make predictions, people can make informed decisions based on the data they get. So analytics is another big area with these things, because there will be hundreds of sensors deployed. So when you get all this data, you don't want to show it in an Excel sheet, which makes it really useless for human to process all this information to make some informed decisions. You want to show them graphs, charts, pies, and some sort of trailing graphs or something like that, to make sure that people understand what's happening, and then so they can actually do things based on what's in the field. And then IoT gateways and communication protocols, and Zigbees and MQTT, and you can use even a REST API. So different means of communication, which to choose for which purpose, and for your particular solution. So which you need to have an understanding of these technologies as well. And then hardware design. So as I said, if you're not a hardware guy, you can focus on all the other things which involve software, and if you're a hardware guy, you need to have a very good understanding of hardware. So when you say hardware, it's not just one hardware. Say that, okay, I can assemble prototypes using Raspberry Pis. You see, that's not going to be enough. You need to have an understanding, overall understanding of different devices, because you may be getting a prototype from ESP32 or 28 or some of the other MCUs that's out there. So you need to be having an understanding of how to do your prototypes or the device using different components. And then programming, of course. So out of all these fields, most of these things you need basic programming. So you can't say that I'm just a hardware engineer, because most of the hardware engineers, they also write firmwares. So firmwares is pretty much a software which sits inside the hardware, which processes the information that the hardware does before it actually sends to the backend server. So writing a firmware, you still need knowledge in programming. So typical programming language people use, or C is a mandatory. So if you're going to be in IoT field, if you don't know how to use C, then you may be pushing yourself out of the space where there is a lot of legacy systems. They actually, people migrate into something pretty latest, to let's say Windows 10 IoT core using C#. And if someone is actually migrating all their systems from C-based devices to C#, then you need to understand what C-based system does. So you need to know base C. So almost all previous systems which is done few years ago, most of them, many of them, anything that is done using Arduinos, most of them are done using C. And the next one is Python. Python is pretty popular with IoT. And then we got C#, which is also popular with any Windows or .NET or .NET micro framework based devices. They use .NET. At the same time, anything that the backend system people use, which is let's say if it's ASP or PHP or Node.js, even Node.js getting really popular within IoT space. In Raspberry Pis, there is actually a separate version of flavor of Windows that you can put into. It's called Node.js, and it's called Chakra based Node.js. It's actually a little variant that you can add it to your Windows core, such a way it makes it work with Node.js. Anyway, we'll talk all those things a bit later on. This video is getting a bit longer. So these are all the different areas that you can work through. All right, guys, let's stop it at this stage. And thanks for watching, and watch the following video. And if you have any questions, put into the comment section. Thank you so much.